So I think we all know by now that 0% AI are absolutely rubbish when it comes to the F1 game. I mean, just have a look at this. However, in that video, I used my brakes. So to make this the hardest challenge I've ever done against 0% AI, I'm going to try and beat them whilst having the brakes disabled in only 5 laps from the back of the grid. So for this challenge, I'm going to be driving around the Necia International Circuit in Qatar, because after about half an hour of just looking through every track, this was the track that had the least heavy braking zones. So to start off, I knew that into every single corner I would have to take a wide line whilst lifting and coasting so I could naturally slow down and at the same time try and go around the outside of the AI. Luckily for me, this worked perfectly, and coming through turn 1, I got past Logan Sargent straight away. To be honest, I probably should have got past Nico Hülkenberg and Yuki Tsunoda on the exit, and this could be massive considering I only have 5 laps to overtake 19 cars. I managed to get past Yuki through turn 3, and looking back, I've honestly got no idea how I didn't get a warning here. I then thought I was going to get past Nico Hülkenberg on the straight, but obviously I had to slow down to make the corner. However, he did leave a gap open for me in turn 4, which allowed me to get past him and Valtteri Bottas, which was massive. Turn 6 was up next, and this was one of the 3 heavy braking zones on the track, so I knew that I wouldn't be able to get past Daniel Ricciardo. So to try and get past Daniel, I took a wide line around the outside of him, and this worked out perfectly. So now I was up to 15th place, and it hadn't even been one sector yet, which was so good. I actually almost spun going through turn 7, trying to get around the outside of Esteban Ocon. The problem with this was that I had to be careful through these couple of corners because turn 10 was the heaviest braking zone on the track, but honestly I probably should have defended these corners a little bit better. Anyway, leaving turn 10, I flew past Esteban, however I stupidly picked up my first warning, and this was completely unnecessary.
Donut, you're so stupid!
Now we're coming up to the final corners of this lap, and you can probably tell that I haven't driven around this track before, as the corner that I'm lifting and coasting for here is usually almost flat. Anyway, this did set me up for a nice cutback on Lance Stroll, so now I was up to P14. He momentarily re-overtook me into the final corner, but that was because I was setting myself up for a good exit, which was absolutely necessary. This was because I was running 50-50 wings, and therefore I had 0 straight line speed, and I had to let off the throttle so early to slow down into the first corner. Zhou Guanyu and Alex Albon both overtook me coming into turn 1, and I'm not going to lie, this is where I realised that this challenge would go down to the very end of the race. Luckily for me though, I got past Alex Albon straight away through turn 1, however I was more concerned about what was going to be happening in 3 laps time. Anyway, I then got a better exit out of turn 2 than Zhou, and so after 2 laps and 3 corners I was up to 11th place. This was great, but things were about to get a lot worse. After this overtake, I thought I was going to fly past Pierre Gasly, but the opposite turned out to happen. I couldn't get close to him, and when I did, I had to hold back so much so I could make the corners, which was so frustrating. And then in my attempt to try and catch Pierre Gasly, I stupidly got myself another warning, so now I was up to 2 warnings. If I got another, I would earn myself a 3-second penalty, which would massively hurt my chances of winning. But to actually win, I have to get to the front of the pack in the first place. I finally got past Pierre Gasly by doing a pretty similar move to last lap, but this time I realised that I didn't need to stop accelerating so early. Coming into the final corner, I didn't actually get overtaken this time, which meant that I could set myself up for a really nice exit and maybe even an overtake on Oscar Piastri. And that's exactly what happened, but then my maximum downforce settings kicked in and I was quickly reminded of what challenge I was actually trying to complete. However, it wasn't all bad, as I had just set the fastest lap of the race, and honestly this is where I thought the challenge might be possible, but I needed to be considerably faster than the rest of the grid. For the first couple of corners I battled with Oscar Piastri, but to be honest I just knew that I had to squeeze him out of the way, and that's exactly what I did, so now I was comfortably into the top 10. Next up was Lando Norris, but I knew that it would be difficult to get past him through this first sector, as this is where I seemed to lose all of my time. 2 of the 3 heavy braking zones were in this section, and I was losing a second or 2 per corner, and this was against 0% AI. And this is pretty much all of the proof that you need. Into turn 6 I lost 9th place to Oscar Piastri, but I was desperate to make sure I got back past him, considering I only had 2.5 laps to make 8 overtakes, so I knew that I had to get a move on. Thankfully I did eventually get past Oscar around the outside of turn 7, and now I knew that I had to overtake Lando Norris by the end of the lap if I wanted any chance of completing this challenge. As you just saw, it took me a while to get up to the back of Lando and to get past him because I couldn't even do it on my usual overtaking spot at the penultimate corner. I eventually managed to get past Lando by going around the outside of him at the final corner, so now I was up to P8 with only 2 laps to go. Next up was Sergio Perez, but along the main straight I was more concerned about keeping my position and defending from Lando because I knew there would be no way that I'd be able to get ahead of Checo just yet with my shocking straight line speed. I stayed right in Checo's slipstream the whole way down the straight, and then when we got into the first corner I had my best run of the race so far and I absolutely flew past Austin. Now things were really starting to improve for me. Next up was the first of 2 3-car groups that I would have to try and get past, and this one contained Carlos Sainz, George Russell and Fernando Alonso. I thought I was going to get past Carlos here, but unfortunately I had to let off the throttle, but to be honest, looking back, I definitely could have accelerated for a little bit longer. I'm not going to lie to you, the part of this race that was making me think this challenge could actually happen was that, as you can see here, Max Verstappen was in 3rd place, and if you've ever played against F123 AI before, you'll know he usually pulls away by a mile in most races, so this was ideal. Anyway, that's enough of my waffle. I probably should have gone around the outside of Carlos Sainz through here, but in the end he just moved out of my way after I bumped him a little, so now I was up to 6th place with a lap and a half to go. Luckily for me, going through turn 9 and 10, Carlos couldn't get past me, so now I could set myself up for a move on George Russell. This time, leaving turn 10, I didn't get another warning, which was ideal, and I made a very comfortable overtake on George. Next up was Fernando Alonso, and I was going to be patient with Fernando because I knew that if I could get past him through the penultimate corner, I'd have just over a lap to catch up to the top 3 and hopefully also overtake them. In the end, I actually overtook Fernando a little earlier than I thought I was going to, which I can't complain about, and now I was focused on catching up to the front 3 cars for the final lap of the race. I gained a full second through the penultimate corner, and then through the final corner I was actually able to take a proper line this time, which gained me another second. Annoyingly, I wasn't able to get DRS off of Verstappen, so even though I had fully caught up to Max, there was no way I could overtake him just yet. So to start off lap 5, I set another fastest lap of the race, which was 2 seconds faster than my previous personal best, and now I was so confident that I could win this race. Coming into the first corner, I obviously had to just let Max go, so I practically lost all of my progress up to the back of him from the previous lap. And this was only going to get worse, because this first sector was where I knew that I would lose all of my time, and I had to be cautious to not fall too far behind the front 3. I was so much slower than the AI through here, but I had to stay close to him if I wanted any chance of winning the race. I think that part of the reason that I didn't overtake Max as early as I would have ideally wanted to was because I was honestly desperate to just not get another warning. And therefore I would have got a penalty, because I knew that there was absolutely no way that I was going to be able to break a 3-second gap to the cars behind me, and then of course I wouldn't win the race. Anyway, leaving turn 6 here, I decided that I had to get a move on and finally overtake Max Verstappen. We're now coming up to turn 7, and this is a fastest right-hander, and this is where I decided to go around the outside of Max, so now I was up into the podium places with a sector and a half to go. Coming into turn 10, I had to push a little bit harder just to make sure that I wouldn't be overtaken by Max on the entry. Luckily for me, I didn't get overtaken by Max, but the exit of this corner was one of my best overtaking spots, and I got a perfect cutback on Charles Leclerc, which put me up to P2 coming into my strongest part of the track. Or at least I thought it was my strongest part of the track, because I had a horrible run through some of these corners. I decided to change my plan of making an overtake on Lewis Hamilton through the penultimate corner and actually just get DRS for the final straight. As you can see, through the penultimate corner I just backed off way too much, and at this point I thought that I wouldn't win the race. I also had to back off into the final corner, however I made my way around the outside of Lewis Hamilton, so now I was in the lead, but the race was not over just yet. I was constantly checking behind me to see if I would get out-dragged along the main straight because of my poor straight line speed, but I was so lucky that I chose to get the DRS, because as we crossed the finish line here, I only won the race by 1/10 of a second. Thank you all for watching, and if you have any other F123 challenge video ideas, please put them in the comments below.